Hey there friends, what's going on? It's Codiak here, back for another Assassin's Creed Valhalla video, and by the title, I bet you can figure out what we're talking about today. That is right, abilities in the game. Specifically, the melee abilities. We're gonna break them down, we're gonna rank them, because you guys are just loving this content. I honest to God never thought that I would turn into a tier lister. I just never thought those types of videos would be ones that I enjoy producing. But here's the deal. I've tried to talk honestly about things like melee weapons and ranged weapons and armor, but today you guys asked for it, so I'm gonna keep going. We're gonna talk about melee abilities. And just so we're all on the same page here, there's a couple different factors that are gonna weigh in on how I rank these things. One is its overall effectiveness at killing enemies. Obviously, you're using abilities to kill enemies, so how effective is an ability at actually killing enemies? Two, how efficient is that ability? Is the ability waste a lot of time? Does the ability take a lot of time to execute? Does the ability affect more than one enemy? That's a really big sticking point for a lot of these abilities that we're going to talk about. And of course, we're going to talk about the level 2 nature of each ability. You obviously can find the books of knowledge for each of these abilities twice. That's going to upgrade it and give you a little bit extra potency. So I want to make sure we all have a baseline for where most of these rankings are going to come into the picture. So let's dive in and break down the list. All right, so when it comes to the F tier, there's really only one clear winner in my eyes, and that is, of course, Feign Death. I think this is probably the most useless ability in the entire game, and I understand it's an Assassin's Creed game. Sometimes you're in a sticky situation, you need to feign death. Maybe that lets the guards off your tail, but honestly, Valhalla just plays so differently than any other Assassin's Creed game. There's so much more of an emphasis on loud, in-your-face combat, and I find that feign death doesn't really fit into the picture. Even if you're an assassin and you're going with a full assassin build, there are just ways to escape, and using feign death doesn't really seem to work. Now, the upgraded version of Feign Death does allow you to do a surprise assassination, so you could run into a tricky situation, feign death, and maybe jump up at an enemy and kill them. You can even do this with bigger enemies once you get the advanced assassination technique, but overall, it just isn't that great of a move. It's not very efficient, it's kind of a waste of time. It does take a long time to kind of go from start to finish with it, so that's why I think compared to all the other melee abilities, and that's, of course, we have to remember that we're comparing against all of the other melee abilities, it definitely gets an F rank. Moving right along to the D tier, I had a really tough time with this first ability, Blinding Rush. Now, I think a lot of players will find this ability to be useless, they just won't use it, but I know there's somebody out there that really thinks that Blinding Rush is a much better ability than I'm giving it credit for. Blinding Rush allows you to basically use your stamina to move undetected. You can run right through a main area of enemies and you won't be detected. Now, this may come into the picture for some players that want to either move through an encampment or maybe a castle, something like that, but I think most of us are either going to work from the outside in or the inside out, and finding a way to really use Blinding Rush in an organic sense doesn't really make sense. Even the way that they show it in the tooltip, where you're kind of running in a straight line doing assassinations, because at level 2 you can kind of chain assassinations together, it just really doesn't seem like it's that great of an ability. Now again, I may be completely missing the mark with this one. It is never something that I would use in my daily kit. Again, Valhalla plays very differently than other Assassin's Creed games. If I'm going to run into a castle, I'm either going to do it super stealthy, I'm going to do it with my bow and just pick people off. There's no chance that I'm going to use Blinding Rush, use my precious adrenaline to try and get these assassinations, when I could easily do that in another way that's more efficient, that doesn't waste one of my adrenaline slots. So yes, it is definitely a D tier ability in my opinion. Another D tier ability in my opinion is Kick of Tyr, and this one could go either way. I just think Kick of Tyr is not that great in terms of actually doing damage to enemies. Yes, there is the added catch that you could kick enemies into other things, other obstacles, and they will take some sort of damage, but you have to land your kick, you have to line up your kick, and there's no real easy way to do that, unlike with the Harpoon, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Kick of Tyr doesn't do a whole lot of damage, even with the obstacle collision thing in the mix, and again, it's really about that efficiency here. You're only targeting one enemy, you may get the kick in the right direction, it's only doing a small amount of damage, it's not that great in the grand scheme of things, and especially when you compare it to other abilities that you have. I would never use Kick of Tyr and waste one of my precious adrenaline slots when I could use something like Harpoon Impalement or Dive of the Valkyries, which, a little teaser, we're going to talk about that obviously. We've kind of talked about this before. Developers will put things into games, whether it be armor or weapons, or in this case, abilities, that really aren't that great. They're fun, they're flashy, and there's a little bit of nostalgia here with the Spartan kick, but in terms of actually being a good ability, I can't give it higher than a D. No way. Moving up to the C tier here, we do have a few different options, and I want to start with Rage of Helheim. This is an ability that is not very efficient. It's a one-target ability, but you are going to get some consistency with it if you're good at the alternating kind of mini game that you have to do to land the damage. Now, you can really take advantage of this ability specifically when you want to deal with brutal enemies or more elite enemies, because you can target them with Rage of Helheim, you can really wail on them, do a lot of damage to them, maybe not kill them, and this is kind of why it's a C tier. You're not really going to kill a lot of enemies with Rage of Helheim. You maybe kill some lesser minions, but if you're really using it to great efficiency, going after the harder targets, you're going to be able to chunk them down 2/3 of their health, maybe even 3/4 of their health, and that's where I feel Rage of Helheim works very well. And at the upgraded version, you're just going to be able to do more damage because you're going to be able to punch faster, and you know, punching faster equals more damage. Everybody knows that. So Rage of Helheim, a decent ability. I wouldn't call it good, but definitely decent. Also in the C tier is Vengeance of Thor, and I think this one may rub some people the wrong way. Vengeance of Thor is a decent ability. You can hit multiple enemies with it. Basically allows you to charge up your weapon for 1 or 2, depending on what weapon you're using, big attacks that do a lot of damage. Now, if you're just looking for straight up damage, Vengeance of Thor is a decent ability, but the catch is you can get hit when charging up your Vengeance of Thor, basically making it useless. And if you're not good at moving and reading enemies, there is a good chance you're gonna get hit. You can't dodge when you're using Vengeance of Thor, you can't parry, so you're basically holding on to this ability, waiting for it to charge up, and with the upgrade, you're waiting a little bit longer to get that second kind of tick to do even more damage. You get hit, it does nothing. So it's a C tier ability for that reason alone. It hits like a truck, I love that about Vengeance of Thor, but in terms of overall efficiency and flexibility for all types of players, I definitely think it's in the C category. So now we're getting to the good stuff, the B tier melee abilities that I think are definitely worth considering for your day-to-day operations in Assassin's Creed Valhalla. And I'm going to start with Throwing Axe Fury. This is an ability I've used from day one. I do think it is really good, especially when it comes to the upgraded version. And what basically happens is you throw a bunch of axes at any targets that are in range. This may be one target, this may be multiple targets, and the kicker with the upgraded version is that all of those enemies are going to be staggered, and that is absolutely huge. I talked about efficiency being a big factor in how I rank these abilities, and the fact that you can stagger multiple enemies, opening them up for absolutely devastating light and heavy attacks, means Throwing Axe Fury is very good as a utility ability on your toolbar. Is it going to kill people? Probably not. It does not do a lot of damage. Even when it only throws one axe at a target, it does do more damage, but it's still not a lot of damage. It's fantastic when it comes to giving you flexibility in combat, and that's why I think it's really worth your time. You really only need to use 1, maybe 2 instances of Throwing Axe Fury, stagger everybody in a tricky situation. It gives you the ability to kind of break away if you need to. It gives you the ability to kind of reset your mental thinking if you're in a fog. It also just is a really good ability for setting up kills, and that's why I definitely think it's a B tier ability. My other choice for a B tier ability is Rush and Bash, and I really do like this ability, although some people may not agree with me here. I think this is one of the ones that people may not agree with me that it's a B tier. You can basically use this ability to rush continuously until you make contact with an enemy, pick them up, and you can either throw them off a ledge, slam them into a wall. They take extra damage when you slam them into a wall, and there's some really good use cases for Rush and Bash. Now, the upgraded version allows you to take advantage of enemies stunned against the wall by finishing them off with an extra attack, and that usually ends up being an axe to the face. And I think Rush and Bash works really well in most instances. You can use it to kind of break away with a big enemy and get out of a pack of enemies. You can use it to push harder enemies like the Drenger boss off a cliff. That's how I did it. I mean, it was literally one move and he was dead. So I think there's a lot of flexibility here. I think the range of use for Rush and Bash is a lot greater than people give it credit for. Does it kill multiple people? Does it always kill somebody? No, it doesn't. But there's a lot of flexibility, and it gives you a lot of opportunities to either kill enemies, position enemies in a better position, or just break away and get away from enemies. So I think there's a lot of use cases here, which is why I think Rush and Bash should be in the B tier. So we've got 4 abilities left, and in the A tier, I want to talk about 2 of them. We've got Fire Strike and Poison Strike. And I'm going to talk about them together because they really are the same ability, just with different status effects. Fire Strike, of course, sets your weapon on fire. You can use that to set enemies on fire. And for Poison Strike, you can poison your weapon, thus allowing you to poison your enemies. And I think this is one of those abilities that is not flashy. We talked about that in the armor video. Sometimes the best things are not the flashiest, but the most straightforward. And the ability to set enemies on fire, do damage over time with either the fire ability or the poison ability, is massive. There are also items like Mournful Cry and Suitor's Sword that will allow you to tap into those status effects, doing more damage or giving you some sort of healing effect, so you have to take that into consideration too. Now, the upgraded versions of both of these abilities allow you to either use a poison cloud or a fire cloud right when you set your weapon on fire or poison it, and that is really effective too, mainly because it staggers enemies. It gives you a little bit of a boost when it comes to whatever status effect you're applying to the enemies, and there's just a lot of really good damage that you can dish out once your weapon is either poisoned or on fire. Enemies will stagger when they're overly poisoned or really catching on fire, and I think there's a lot of flexibility here again and utility for players to use these two abilities to set up kills, and that is really why it gets that A tier rank. They are both fantastic abilities, and you have to look long term. You're going to get multiple uses out of one instance of either Fire Strike or Poison Strike. You're going to get a lot of opportunities to set enemies on fire or poison them, which is why these two abilities, you cannot take them for granted. If you've never checked them out, if you've never used them, you absolutely should. I believe you unlock both of these by just starting the Order of the Ancients thing, so make sure you're killing the Order of the Ancient members just to the point where you can unlock Fire Strike and Poison Strike, and I promise you, you will not regret it. And here we are once again at the S tier for another Assassin's Creed Valhalla list. And of course, if you guys have been doing the math, you know what's next. Dive of the Valkyrie. This is one of the best abilities in the game when it comes to damage, use case, efficiency, flexibility. It is just fantastic. And if you don't know how it works, basically you jump up into the air, you launch yourself towards an enemy, slam down on him, knocking him to the ground, doing a ton of damage, and the upgraded version allows you to basically do an AoE knockdown at the point of impact. Now, Dive of the Valkyrie has a lot of flexibility. It allows you to take on big enemies, it allows you to close gaps, it actually can allow you to kind of get away from a situation if you need to, and of course it staggers and kind of disrupts the flow of combat, opening up opportunities for you to kill enemies. Anybody that's used Dive of the Valkyrie knows this is an S tier ability. I really don't think there's going to be that much debate on this one. It is fantastic. If you're not using it, use it. It looks cool as hell. It is wildly efficient when it comes to killing enemies, opening up enemies to be killed, and of course, it does have that little bit of mobility and utility that we talked about that is just too good to pass up. The final ability is, of course, Harpoon Impalement, and I've been using Harpoon Impalement since the very beginning, and I actually kind of regret that I got it later than I should have, but it is just fantastic. Basically allows you to harpoon an enemy and throw them in any direction you want using either your arrow keys or your controller, and this is really the kicker. When you throw enemies into each other or into objects, they take an obscene amount of damage. I don't know if it's coded wrong, if the game is just bugged, which wouldn't surprise me or really anybody at this point. They take an astronomical amount of damage. I've killed bosses, I have killed elite enemies, I have killed zealots by using Harpoon Impalement, throwing them into trees, throwing them into walls, whatever. And the upgraded version makes it even better. You can pull the enemy towards you and basically chop off their head. I mean, what is better than that? It is one of the coolest abilities in the game, and you knew this one had to be good. They have shown Harpoon Impalement long before the game was released, and you knew that they were going to put their heart and soul into making this ability good. And it is. It's an S tier ability. It does not kill a lot of enemies. Sometimes you'll get a double kill when you throw enemies into each other. But the key here is that you can control which enemies you want to take down. It really allows you to focus on the enemies that you need to prioritize, whether it be those elite enemies or zealots. Maybe you're in a situation where there's a zealot and some minions around. It really just gives you a lot of flexibility to control the flow of combat with the most high priority targets. And that is why the Harpoon Impalement gets that S tier. And there you have it, guys, all of the melee abilities ranked in the Codiak fashion. I've really enjoyed putting these together for you. Like I said, I really didn't think I was going to do a lot of these videos. You guys keep telling me that you're liking them. The views show that you guys are liking them. The like to dislike ratio shows that you guys are liking them. And as a YouTuber, that's really what we love to see. So if you like it, I'll make it. I'm having a good time putting it together. We've only got a couple left. We've got the ranged abilities, and then we could dive into the shields if we want to. I've seen some calls for both already, so you know that ranged abilities is going to be next. And if you guys haven't checked out our other videos, maybe you clicked on this one, we're interested in the abilities. We've already talked about all the melee items in the game. We've talked about all the ranged items in the game, and we've talked about all of the armor sets. That was a huge video. You guys can check out all 3 of those right now. They're up on the channel. And remember, guys, we can have a conversation about this stuff. I am not the end-all be-all when it comes to Assassin's Creed Valhalla. If you have a different opinion about an ability or one of the items we talked about, let me know in the comment section below. Let's have a conversation about it. I do my best to read every single comment every single day. I'm a pretty busy guy, but I do my best to kind of engage with you because you took the time to write the comment. I'm going to take the time to try and read the comment. Anyways, if you like this video, don't forget to hit that thumbs up, and of course, subscribe to Legacy Gaming so you never miss a new video, whether it be Assassin's Creed or something else. My name is Codiak, and from everyone here at Legacy Gaming, thanks for watching, and play on.